Sharia law means the end of the Second Amendment. And if you're about to click off, you think this is going to be some raving fear-mongering, everything I say here is going to be backed up by historical sources directly cited, as well as the Muslim sources and scriptures themselves. Now, right off the bat, you might be thinking that I thought Sharia law was just praying 5 times a day. How can it have anything to do with the Second Amendment? And the answer to that is that Sharia law is a whole lot more than just governing Islam. It also governs those under Islam. And a central tenet to it is that Christians who are under Islam, who are called dhimmis, are barred the use of arms. Not for war, not for hunting, not for self-defense. The actual possession of weapons and the carrying of those weapons is absolutely forbidden. But let's get into a little bit more about what Sharia law is. It does include, like you may have heard, praying 5 times a day. If you've been told that all it is praying 5 times a day, then that's frankly propaganda. But it does include the Islamic religious life. It is Islamic law. It covers all the aspects of being a Muslim. It can cover things like marriage, for example. Like if you married a girl before she had her first period and you didn't like her, and so you've divorced her and now your friend wants to marry her, she has to wait 3 months after the divorce in order to get married. That's part of Sharia law. It's in the Quran, Surah 65, verse 4. You can look that up. Or like adultery. For example, if you have a woman who you captured in war and now you've successfully chained her up and you're wondering, am I allowed to sleep with her even if she has a husband? Sharia law says in the Quran, Surah 4, verse 24, you're allowed to sleep with her. It's not adultery. It's okay. This is all part of Sharia law, but it also applies to those who are under Islam. And the part of Sharia law that's going to apply to Christians is the part of Sharia law that is about dhimmis. Now, dhimmi means protected person, which is a little bit of political correctness, but protected person is in the sense of mafia protection, essentially. It's those who pay the protection money. In Islam, this is called jizya. It's a special tax that's levied on Christians or Jews who live in Islamic countries, and that's the tax they pay in order to be protected from their enemies, meaning that pay this tax or we're going to be your enemies. The reason they're paying this tax is because they have been subdued by the Muslims. Surah 9, verse 29. Fight against such of those as who have been given the scriptures, as believe not in Allah or the last day, and they forbid not what Allah has forbidden by his messenger, Muhammad, and they do not follow the religion of truth, until they pay the tribute readily, having been brought low. That is the command for Muslims. And this is not a temporary command for a one-time situation. That is the broad command for Muslims to fight against those who've been given the scripture, Christians and Jews, but don't believe in what Muhammad said. This is what's called one of the sword verses. And if you're thinking, no, that can't be right. That can't apply. Islam's a peaceful religion. I heard this one thing that said that in Islam, if you kill any man, it's like you've killed the whole human race. They're so peaceful. One, literally just read that verse, that's Surah 5:32, and then read the verse after, because one, in the verse itself, it says that Allah gave that to the Jewish people, which is actually correct because that's literally stolen from the Talmud. It's literal plagiarism. And the next verse says that for Muslims, if someone's making mischief in the land, you can kill them, you can crucify them, and you can cut off their hands and their feet on opposite sides. That's literally the next verse. So if you're thinking that Islam is peaceful from that verse, please, I beg you, just actually read it. But if you're saying, there's another peaceful verse in the Quran, I found a verse here, Islam has a different system under Sharia, under their teachings, than do Christianity or Judaism. In Christianity or Judaism, the scriptures are a cohesive whole. The scriptures are in conjunction with each other. If Paul says one thing and Peter says another thing and James says another thing in their books in the New Testament, those are in harmony. If it's something that looks like a contradiction, you have to harmonize it. In Islam, though, there's an explicit ability given to remove previous verses that you don't like anymore. It's called abrogation. Surah 2:106 goes over this. It says, Allah speaking, whenever we, Allah speaking in the plural, abrogate a verse or cause it to be forgotten, we bring one better than it or equal to it. Do you not know that Allah is powerful over everything? This means that because Surah 9, the Quran is not written chronologically, not in chronological order. It's written in order of length, very odd, like the first surahs are longest and the last surahs are shortest. But chronologically, Surah 9 is the second to last surah, which means that the verses in it abrogate any conflicting verses before it. This is why this warlike verse is abrogating peaceful verses before it, which you can see just by looking at the history of Islam. But what we're talking about here is Sharia law and its application of the Second Amendment. We already have the fact that Sharia law commands Muslims to fight against Christians and Jews. But what does it mean when a Christian or Jew is under Sharia law, is under the Islamic jurisdiction? This, historically, has always meant disarmament. So we can start at the very beginning in the 7th century, which was called the Pact of Umar. Umar was the third Islamic caliph. He was one of the companions of Muhammad. This is extremely early Islamic history. And the Pact of Umar, dhimmis were put under certain conditions in order to be allowed to live in an Islamic society. One was paying a jizya tax. Two was a whole lot of long list of things, including that they could not hang swords on the shoulders of the saddles of their horses, collect weapons of any kind, or carry these weapons. What that means, in very plain language, is that this is going to be forbidden to you. And given that it says that you can't collect weapons of any kind or carry those weapons, that means that this is very clearly also going to be forbidden to you. Now, this is just a BB1, but given how Sharia was actually applied, the BBs might be out the door too. Because the American consul in Algeria, this would be William Shaler, reported that the dhimmis under Sharia, remember the dhimmis is you and me, the dhimmis are Christian and Jews, were not only not allowed to have swords, but they were prohibited from having canes even. In Yemen, the Danish royal expeditionary Karsten Niebuhr reported that even daggers were denied to dhimmis. This is a strict disarmament. Now, a Muslim might try to make an excuse here and say, wait, you're just cherry picking. I'll find a historical example where Christians were allowed to have weapons. And a couple of those actually do exist. But the reasons why are plainly obvious. Practicality. Early in the Islamic conquest, in certain areas where Islam couldn't successfully hold their territories, they did allow for Christians to hold weapons because they weren't strong enough to take them away yet. You can see this in some places, in the Balkans and Eastern Europe. But was that allowed permanently? No, absolutely not. As soon as the Muslims were strong enough, they disarmed the public. And you can see exactly the consequences of disarmament that you would expect. In Kosovo in the 1860s, the British consul there, named J.E. Blunt, wrote a report about the sorry state of the Christian peasants there, that they were completely denied the use of arms, and so they were made easy targets for brigands. The 1860s in the Balkans was a chaotic, terrible time. There was banditry, there was brigandage, and you were in constant danger, but you couldn't defend yourself. It literally was the Wild West at the same time as the Wild West. Imagine being in the Wild West with no ability to defend yourself and then make it worse. These peasants were being under active oppression because that's the entire point of this Islamic system of Sharia. If you are someone in that situation and your family is in danger, you have precious few options. You can submit and your family remains in danger. You can try to illegally get a weapon, in which case your family is in danger that if you get caught, you're screwed. Or you can flee, like many did, or convert to Islam under the threat of physical violence. That's the reason why in areas in the Balkans, in Kosovo today, Kosovo is a Muslim country in Europe, in an area that has been historically Christian almost from the start. Early missionaries got there very quickly because Islamic law, Sharia law, forced the Christians out or it forced them into Islam. Now, you can give everyone all the sources I just gave you. You can quote the verses from the Quran. You can quote the Islamic scholarship, the Pact of Umar. You can, Nawawi and the Minhaj will speak to this as well. But someone will say, no, I don't care about all that. I'm just going to pretend all that didn't happen. We Muslims today are different. We're going to be nice. We're going to be kind. We're not going to take away your guns. And you've heard that before. You've heard that from a million politicians. And what happens when they get into office, when they get in power, is always the same. They come right after them. It's the grabber mindset. It's always what they're going to do. And that, honestly, is going to apply for these people who say that they're your friends. Because that's kind of the reason we're even having this discussion. The reason that we're even talking about Sharia now on the conservative side of things and the Christian side of things, the people who identify as conservative or identify as Christian are platforming Islam and making excuses for it and even allowing propaganda for it. You can see the Hodge Twins doing this. You can see Tucker Carlson doing this, acting like Islam is a good thing because they're our ally. They're just traditional, just like us, right? Wrong. Look at the actual applicability to this. Look at what actually happens when you bring Islam into power. Look, you can say that, like, oh, there's some conservative Muslim and they'll stand up for traditional values. The ones who are conservative enough to stand up for those traditional values will stand up for their traditional values, which includes subjugating Christians. And the ones that are liberal enough not to do that are the ones who aren't going to be your ally in any case. Look at London. London has a huge Muslim population. They've had a Muslim mayor there for nearly 10 years. Are they traditional? Did that devil's bargain work? No, they have pride parades all the time. They're just a horrifically woke city. They're worse than us. What do they also have now? The fact that you see so many horror stories on this, get arrested for criticizing Islam, for criticizing Muhammad, even in a situation when it's true. Say a true thing about Muhammad, like Muhammad physically consummated a relationship with a 9-year-old, and you can get dinged for it, because their traditional values include the suppression of Christianity. Now, London already was disarmed. We're not disarmed yet, and God willing, we never will be. But Sharia is a means to accomplish that. Sharia on a large scale, not really likely with a huge Muslim population. Sharia on a small scale is a severe threat. It is fundamentally inconsistent with our Constitution. And as Christians, it's fundamentally inconsistent with our faith. There is nothing in Christianity that says to give a false religion that teaches false doctrine, that teaches evil things, power, to give them power and authority over anyone. We should be preaching the gospel to them on a religious level, and on a political level, we should be defending right government, and Sharia is not right government. Just to wrap things, Surah 929, like I quoted, about fighting against those who don't believe among the scriptures. The very next verse says why they fight them. It says they fight them because we believe that Jesus is the Son of God. In Islam, they say that Allah, God, cannot have a son because he doesn't have a wife. Yes, that is the actual argument. But because of that, they say that if you say that Jesus is God, like every Christian does, you've committed shirk, the worst of all Islamic sins. And they hate you for it. They have always historically hated you for it. And the idea that we are going to make excuses for Sharia now is a dishonor, a disservice, a disrespecting of all the Christians who have been subjugated by Islam over millennia, all the brothers and sisters who have suffered under this evil religion. Where Christianity started, where Christianity started, in Israel, and then going up into Asia Minor, in what's now Turkey. Open the book of the New Testament. Look at all the cities that Paul goes to. A whole bunch of them are in Turkey. How many Christians are in Turkey? Precious few, because of the oppression. Either the oppression spiritually, the oppression in terms of disarmament, or the oppression in terms of literal killing, mass execution that Muslims have done to Christians. On a purely spiritual level, Islam cannot be accepted. But if you're watching this and you're not a Christian, but you care about your rights, you care about your Second Amendment, you care about the Constitution, there is no room to be made for Sharia law. The enemy of my enemy is not my friend, when the enemy of my enemy is another enemy. I'm sorry. Islam is not ever going to be your friend. They desperately need the gospel, and we don't need a bit of their Sharia.